I'd like to call the F&A committee to order. Please note attendance. And we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, modifications to the agenda proposed? Go ahead.
Could you just scroll down just a tad? Yeah, could we move to two separate motions? One is move to add a discussion of utility rates and rate study. Just an introductory discussion of the topic, not expecting anyone to know answers.
Second, you okay with that, Councilman Washington?
Yes.
All right. So move. Go ahead with your second one.
Second is maybe just add a discussion of funding of labor contracts and possibilities such as levy lid lift. Just add a brief discussion of that, because I think we need to get some kind of direction on where we're headed with that. You know, given the tight budget that we have and what are quite likely to be union expectations over the next year and a half, and the disconnect between those two, I think we got to start getting ahead of that.
Okay. I'm okay.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine.
I'm okay with
All right. I would like to add a discussion concerning affordable housing RFP.
Okay.
Yes.
I was going to make that recommendation, but do it.
Are we good? Any objections to any of those agenda items? Hearing none, let's go ahead and start in on the agenda. Now that we've made those additions, is the agenda approved? Any objections to the agenda as stated so far? If not, we are approved. We'll move on into it. Sorry, didn't mean to skip that step. All right, let's move into public comments. Are there any individuals wishing to make public comment for the committee on items not currently on the agenda? Somebody will need to advise me if we have hands up in the Zoom. I see no hands up in council. Do we have any hands up in Zoom?
No, there's not any right now.
Not any? All right, we'll move on from public comments and move on to the rest. So item number one is approval of minutes dated July 18th, 2023. Chair has no comments or revisions, or any comments or revisions from the committee?
No, none.
All right, unless there are objections, we will take them as submitted, as approved. No objections, minutes are approved. Okay, move to item two, consideration of claims approval report, consideration of claims approval report dated August 14th, 2023. That cannot possibly be right. Am I reading that wrong?
August 14th.
Well, I'm on August 8th, so how am I approving an agenda, a claims report yet to happen?
That will be for next, yeah, those are put on the next week's council meeting, so that will be on the agenda for August 14th. But it is dated July 24th, you're right.
So it's dated August 14th on the assumption that it will be approved, officially approved August 14th in next council. Okay.
Correct, yes.
You have your hand up almost?
Yeah, I'm confused. The claims report is something that's signed by the auditing officer and has a date on it. So unless that's already occurred, we should not be approving that. It means we haven't even seen it. Doesn't even exist yet. But is this just a dating error where we're trying to refer to one that is a July date?
It's a dating
Oh.
error. Yeah,
So can we just update the agenda bill just to refer to that? Is this even an agenda bill item? I'm probably getting confused. That's why I was confused.
It will be.
I can answer that if I might.
Go ahead.
I think that's the claims report date is incorrect. It needs to be dated August 14th. The typical protocol is that the claims report comes to the F&A committee, but it is dated for the council meeting where the full council would be approving it.
Not my understanding of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think that's at all correct on the procedure that's laid out in the municipal code. So the what we've done is take advantage of a state law provision that allows us to delegate the approval of payments to staff. There's some requirements, including an auditing officer and so on. Once those are approved, then they can be paid. They're approved by staff. The council then has 30 days to either, to act on that. It has to be presented to council within 30 days to be approved. At that point, if council wants to object to some payment, they can ask for that to be pulled back. Of course, the payment's already made, so it may not be possible to bring that back. That was something we discussed at length when we adopted this. But that is common with most cities in the state that take advantage of this clause, that it gets, so there's a claim, there's a claims report on a date that's approved by staff as delegated to them and then paid. And then we just have 30 days from that date to then say, hey, we don't like that, or we want something, or just approve it. So the date on the claims report should be the date that it was signed, and therefore, the payments went out. So I think it's just a dating thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with the procedure you're following, because I assume the procedure is the same as what I just described.
Yeah, sure.
So
I'm just trying to follow through
hold on
on
this conversation, because it was signed and dated as August 1 by the auditing officer.
Oh,
I do request that you look at that official date on the agenda and decide what is the appropriate date, have discussions with the attorney and all that. But the claims report in front of us was audited, was signed. Let's talk the claims report now at this stage and let that matter take its own activity. I have seen nothing irregular, or I have any questions in regards to the report, nor have I been advised of any in email.
I don't have any questions either.
I don't have any questions at this point either.
Mary, you have your hand up?
I think, so the date on there is not an error. This is how it has been. If you could just go back and look at previous F&A meetings, it's always the upcoming council meeting that is on the consideration claims approval report. So if you want to go back and look at it, it's true that
No,
they sign it.
and it may not have been noticed up until now, okay? I'm just asking for a review of that date
Will do.
to make sure we're listing the right one, okay? I apologize if I am just waking up and caught it this time, prior time, and missed it prior times, but just review it and we can move on and proceed on with this one as written. Okay.
If I may, I think I put the wrong one in the packet.
Well, that's a different matter.
Yeah,
How's this one is signed? How's this? So should this be removed then?
yes.
Okay,
Let's just take it,
all right,
just take it up our next meeting and just do two at once.
Exactly. Yeah. Take it out, please.
okay, let's take it out. Thank you, that was a quick end to the discussion. All right.
Okay. So
There are objections to the removal of the warrant of claims report after that lengthy discussion. All right, with that, let's move on to Agenda Bill 3, Agenda Bill 23077, Biennial Budget Amendment ERP Project.
What is happening? Am I even on the right? Not even on the right, sorry. I have the wrong packet up. I'm so sorry.
So good evening, council.
Torn ACL bad.
Yeah, so there you go. I'll try to sit somewhere closer next time so you guys don't have to watch that. So thank you very much for spending the evening with me despite my injury. The purpose of this ordinance is to amend the 2023 biennial budget. The administration is requesting an additional $2.23 million in appropriation, basically to establish a separate ERP project fund that will track project expenditures more efficiently, provide transparency into how much is spent on the project, true up the project budget by accounting for the actual amount spent last year, update the project budget to include items unforeseen at the time the project budget was originally conceived, and realign the project organizationally under the proposed support services department. So 2.23 million sounds like a lot, and I want to go through that with you guys. So well, we have to keep in mind that we're establishing an expenditure amount for this new fund, but we have to transfer money into that fund in order to kind of get it started as well, which requires an appropriation too. In addition, we also need to make sure that we're actually lining up how much budget has been unused at this point with the actual what should be budgeted for this biennium. During the previous biennium, we had several placeholders. For example, we told you we would come back and actually take a look at the project budget. We're now at that process where we're trying to update that. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen with everyone here. I'm going to go through kind of 3 different schedules with you: an ERP project fund statement of sources and uses, the appropriation additions and subtractions, so you can kind of see what that equates to. And then we're going to discuss the ERP project budget overall and how that may change between what council has previously approved in terms of the project to life budget versus what we intend to go with in the future, or what we're hoping council will adopt for the future. So with that said, I'm going to go into the slideshow presentation here. We're going to start off with the statement of sources and uses. The begun fund balance for this ERP project fund, as you can see for 2023, is 0. We've listed the sources here that you see between taxes, intergovernmental revenues, miscellaneous revenues, and transfers in. Sorry, oh, it's short, small, okay. So in essence, this city is hoping for.
Somebody's got to turn their
Microphone, mute their microphone. Mute the microphone.
Is that we intend to allocate basically $1.503 million of revenue and other kind of, what do you call them? Really non-revenue sources towards this project, as well as for 2024, an additional $358,000, as well towards this project, for a total of sources coming into this project fund of $1.86 million. For the uses, we're asking for basically in the same dollar amount, $1.86 million to spend over the 23 and 24 period. A majority of that would come under 2 items: the Tyler Munis Professional Services, which reflects AB 21-069, which was the original contract that council had adopted with Tyler. And in addition to that, a future contract amendment. If you recall, during the budget cycle this past year, we had discussed purchasing additional modules, including the Community Development Suite, the Business Management Suite, as well as Socrata Open Finance, in order to take care of several objectives we had at that time period. In terms of employee costs, we're asking for $802,000, basically to support a portion of our new IT manager. 40% of her time would be allocated towards this project from now on. In addition to that, we're asking to bring on 2 current contractors with the city as full-time employees, ideally because it would help us to actually keep our costs down. The contractors themselves actually are more expensive than what it would we would be paying them as employees at the city. Both those positions would be term limited, only through 2024, funded through 2024. And then in addition to that, we also have a short-term employee as well that's going to support us with the chart of accounts as well moving forward as too. And her position is right now only scheduled for 3 months, but we also made sure to include some dollars in here if we need to extend her time at all as well. So those are the kind of 2 primary drivers right now in terms of uses for this project fund, which would be the professional services contract with Tyler, as well as some of employee costs too. What you'll also see here is computer equipment. Council approved Agenda Bill 22-155, basically purchasing computer equipment for the Parks and Public Works Department. They need that computer equipment to be able to go out into the field and actually track assets so that we can upload that information into our new enterprise asset management module. And then in addition to that, below you'll see additional services and studies as well. for things such as GIS services, making sure that they integrate fully with the Tyler Munis system, as well as some other kind of activities largely needed for the enterprise asset management module. So as a consequence of this, we're predicting that by the end of 2024, we would finish with a 0 cash balance. So in essence, using all those sources with the uses kind of shown here. And that is in essence the project fund schedule that we're hoping to set up as a part of this budget amendment. Just to move on a little bit further, why do we need, we're asking for, well, first off, I'm highlighting something here that you see on your screen in terms of total uses. If you take a look at those two numbers, those line up with the ERP project fund appropriation amount requested in your biennial budget ordinance, your budget amendment ordinance itself. So the $1 million that you see there and the $862,000 that you see there, you will see in your biennial budget ordinance table listed in the ERP project fund. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand that that's reconciled to the ordinance table that we have. So bring that one up later. Next is, how do we get to this $2.23 million? Basically, I've got listed here all the additions. There are some subtractions as well, because we also need to clean up the IT fund as well. So the ERP project was funded and paid for out of the IT fund number 502. Consequently, because we want to separate this, that's going to result in some subtractions from that fund itself. So just going through the list up here, we've got our first header basically that says establishing the ERP project fund budget. This includes everything that you saw in the previous page, including the Tyler Munis professional services contract and proposed contract amendment, the very done professional project management services, which council approved under Agenda Bill 20-050, the employee costs alluded to in the previous slide, the computer equipment and additional services and studies. In addition, we have to deconstruct the IT project budget as well, or the IT fund budget primarily, because we're now shifting this project into a separate fund. We also need to make sure that the cash flows with that as well. So in terms of the additions, we have to transfer out $1.006 million in cash to the ERP project fund, which requires an appropriation. In addition, we have to make sure too that we're also making sure that we cover the cost of the Tyler Munis subscription charge, and you also see an increase of roughly $25,000 there. In essence, that's because we didn't budget properly for that charge, and so we need an appropriation increase in order to make sure that we're actually fully budgeting for that subscription charge that we're paying. In addition, there are a number of subtractions within the IT fund as well. Removing the placeholder that we had in there for professional and project management services. Roughly, we just plugged in a number, $100,000 for 2023 and 2024, just to kind of carry the day. Now we're coming back to you to try to clean this all up. In addition to that, we would also remove the employee costs that would now be funded out of Fund 350. And then lastly, we also have a subtraction for 2024 because we over budgeted for the subscription charge in 2024. So consequently, when you add all this up, all the additions and all the subtractions, you get to $2.23 million, which is what I'm showing in this slide. And so the last slide that I want to show you, I know this is a lot of information, so thank you for your patience, is just to go through the project budget itself. So currently the project budget is $1.83 million. What we had budgeted for the 2023-2024 biennium is $545,000. Obviously, that's a massive difference between the life of project budget and what we would just be budgeting for this 2-year period. Consequently, we only actually have spent basically up to date at this point $791,000, which consequently means that we under budgeted for this project in the 23-24 biennial budget. As a result, our remaining implementation budget for the life of the project is $105,000, which is what you see in this table. But for the biennium, right now we're short roughly $745,000. So ideally, those two numbers, the remaining implementation budget for the life of project budget and the 23-24 biennial budget, should equal. but they don't right now, which means that we have to spend some energy through this exercise, through this budget amendment, making sure that we can true up those two numbers. So what we had proposed is the next table on your list here is the proposed budget amendment table. You'll see that we have listed before we get to that proposed implementation budget is $440,000 that we have spent through December 31st, 2022. And in addition to that, you're seeing the same $1 million that we're requesting for 2023 and the $862,000 that we're requesting for 2024, which has been shown in the previous two slides as well as across the budget ordinance information as well. So therefore, the administration is requesting really a life of project budget total of 2.30 million. And then basically a biennial budget that is equal to the amount that we hope to appropriate within the ERP project fund, which is 1.86 million. When you add all that up and you add up the expenditures, subtract from the expenditures and subtract from the outstanding contract value, what you end up with is the remaining implementation budget for both the life of project and this 2-year period of $571,000 in total. And now because they're the same number, that means that we've trued up both the life of project budget and this biennial budget as well. So consequently, the difference, especially for the life of project budget, is really going from $1.83 million to $2.30 million, which is equal to basically $467,000 in total. So in essence, we're intending to increase and asking to increase our life of project budget for the implementation of the ERP project by $467,000. And so with that said, I guess with puzzled looks, I'm more than happy to take any questions you may have.
Go ahead. I wrote down a whole bunch. Let me just start with just kind of thinking about just the mechanics of how our, I'm drawing a blank. These are what kind of funds? These are 502 is a
So internal service.
internal service funds. Thanks. So internal service funds are funded by charges to other funds, correct?
Yes.
So if we change the amount we spend in an internal service fund, that means that we need to charge more to other funds in order to pay for that, correct?
So in this case, we've been treating the ERP project as basically a capital item that has been funded through transfers into it that have no sort of internal service charge associated with the project.
Because they're kind of a one-time deal.
They're a one-time deal. So for example, we've got a transfer of $150,000 from the utilities capital fund into this in order to support this project. So there is the component, right? The general operations of IT is supported by these charges, right, to the other departments basically for the services that they're providing. And so as a consequence, we've got this complicated fund structure where this one element up here, general IT operations, internal service charges basically back to the departments, but then this one section related to this project is having this inflow of money, basically of transfers from other kind of funds in order to support the project moving forward.
Got it. So let me try and say it back, see if I'm saying it right. Internal service funds generally pay for operating costs and therefore are funded by charges to other funds.
Yes.
In this case, we have a capital expenditure going through our internal service fund, not going through a capital fund.
Yeah.
We send it through our internal service fund. Okay, fine. That's permissible. We can do that. And when we funded that, we funded it, a substantial part of it. I'm trying to remember how we did this. I think there was some fun about, anyway, we funded a substantial portion of it from capital fund sources by transferring that money into this internal service fund, right? Okay, so then in this case, let me modify my original question. In this case, if we increase our spending in this internal service fund for this capital project, we need to find some capital money to transfer in to cover that increased cost. Would that be correct?
Yes, and so just going back a slide, for example, there's the section here that describes taxes, for example. That is in essence non-recurring sales tax revenue that we would allocate towards this project, which is has been recorded within the capital improvement plan that we have directed towards capital needs, right?
Got it. So that's, you know exactly where I was going with my questions. You correctly identified where I was going. I was like, what's with this taxes thing? So we have not allocated taxes to internal service funds in the past, I believe. And so could we not accomplish this? I think it's basically what you just said, rather than getting into something where we're starting to reallocate tax sources amongst funds. Can't we just leave it where it is and do what we did previously, which is just do a transfer of that amount into this fund and leave the taxes going where they're going so we can keep track of that?
That is certainly one possibility. Just to add maybe more confusion, right, to this overall is, as a part of the CIP, we had estimated collecting about $430,000 in non-recurring sales tax. As part of that schedule that was presented to council that time, it did not include, that schedule did not include interest. Interest collection is relatively high right now, and so consequently, when you saw the budget ordinance, we had actually reduced the non-recurring sales tax that was expected to be collected within the non-utilities capital fund, Fund 310. So we are certainly collecting more than the amount that was actually budgeted within Fund 310, and we just want to redirect that to this fund. We can keep it going into the non-utilities capital fund and then have a transfer. That's certainly possible. All we would be doing is changing the lines here. So instead of reporting taxes, for example, that would just be a transfer in now on this one.
So
And
I'd
then
be
possibly a transfer out from the non-utility capital fund, which would require an appropriation in that would then increase it from 2.23 million to.
So I'd really be in favor of just keeping it. I'm going to say keeping it simple. That's not necessarily simple. It depends your point of view, what you mean. In this case, I mean from a council member perspective. Okay, you're transferring money and got it. How do we have the money for that? Oh, we've got increased, we just explained, we've got these increased collections. That's why it's okay. But I think that's a much simpler, I think this is very hard for a non-accountant to follow. So I would just say, my point of view would be keep it simple.
But I guess the issue I got, this gets you to 1.8. Then there's an additional jump to get to 2.3. How are we funding the 480, I think it was $67,000 to do that jump?
So on the screen, you'll see actually the 1.862. It's basically in that top section under additions and the headers establishing the ERP project fund budget. You've also got money that's flowing out of the Fund 350, as well as we need to make sure that we cover the subscription charge as well. When you add that up, you've got a total addition that we're asking for of $2.89 million, and then we have a number of subtractions associated with that. So for us, it's a math problem at that point in order to get to the $2.23 million that you see below there.
Okay, so you're transferring funds out of IT, 350 for $1 million. And that was funds already for the ERP project.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So in essence, we collected money in that fund and now we're sending the money back out.
And $24,000 to cover, and that's just to cover the subscription charge. So that's coming out of IT and going into this.
We're cleaning that up, yep.
Yeah, so that's all cleaning of account. Maybe this is where I'm getting. And then you're going to remove the professional and project management services for $200,000.
Because, we're budgeting that in Fund 350, so we no longer need the appropriation for that within 502. And all we did at that time was just put in a placeholder.
So is that money we're expecting to spend, or we're only shifting accounts, or money we're no longer expecting to spend?
So we're eliminating the budget, right? Because we're moving the project into a separate fund, that $200,000 would have went towards that project in Fund 502. but it was a placeholder, so that was insufficient.
Okay, I'm still not sure you're getting me there.
Let me just bring up a point of view. I don't know what others will view, but I think my initial reaction is I'm very much against a separate fund, especially for a separate fund that is just going to have a very finite, short life, a couple of years. I think that's something that was done, I think, at the city in the past, and not, I know you guys are very focused on this, so don't take my comment wrong, but I think you've been doing a great job of simplifying the fund structure. And this sort of seems to me like sort of a step the other way. I believe you guys can easily accomplish, I suspect that the reason here, I was just going to ask you what's the reason, but rather than sort of put you on a gerbil wheel, I'll just say I suspect the reason, correct me if I'm wrong, but I suspect the reason you're just trying to get some clarity onto how what this project is. And it kind of gets muddled with the rest of the IT fund. You're just trying to clean up that view, which I think is fantastic. But I think you can just do that with I'll use the term sub-fund. In other words, we don't have to set up a separate fund in the accounting to accomplish that. You could just break these amounts out. You don't need any action from us to do that. You can just do it. Say, hey, we're just going to present. In essence, you're presenting a fund in 2 columns, so to speak, right? The rest of the IT fund and then this. You just break it out and show it to us. And you don't need appropriations. You don't need anything. Just do that for clarity's sake in your reporting, and then it just goes away in 2 years. So I'd encourage you to do that. And if you did that, then this conversation simplifies, I think, down into, I think, what Councilmember Holloway is driving at, which is, and kind of what I sort of tried to, you're sort of, I think, trying to get us clear on this, is what is actually changing. And as you can tell, we're still a little bit fuzzy on that.
Yeah.
This was, it helped me a long way. Should I shut up now? Or
No, keep going.
Okay, so
Can I just add to the
yeah,
previous?
please
So
do. I've got a
indeed,
different thought.
clarity is really critical for this, and we want to make sure that we're transparent with council as well. And we think that it may be more helpful to actually have a separate fund that would provide that clarity. In addition to that, I would also say efficiency is also key to this too. At this moment, we do have people that are charging accounts, right, where they should not, right, charge accounts, and I've had to clean up a lot of that over time too. And so there is that hassle of always having to go in there and find out which charge is actually going to the right proper account, because it's all within the same fund. And so in some cases, you've got contractors, for example, that are not working on the ERP project being charged to the account within the ERP project budget. And so part of this is to help kind of separate that and keep it as clean as possible too.
Can I just ask though, can you not use the accounting system and just add a sub-fund, which would give it an additional coding number, and then do that internally without us having to act to do that for you? Or is that your system that won't let you do that?
It still is a struggle for people to understand.
Oh, they'll still blow
They
it.
will still, yeah,
Okay, I got
typically
you.
do that. So
Okay.
it would be nice. Not everyone has they're not focused right on the chart of accounts and understanding what each segment actually means. And so some cases when they're submitting their invoices, and we can capture a lot of that, and we often do, but I think we'd prefer not to have to struggle as much as maybe we have in this situation to kind of break those things apart. And, once you find once, and then you'd go back and look some more, and there's 100 invoices that you're now kind of looking through constantly and to see, okay, was this the proper person to be charged this or not? It just makes it so much easier. Plus, we haven't at this stage really moved to where salaries and wages are paid by project, or they're not coding their time to the project as well. So then we're mingling some of these employees with the general IT operations as well. This just helps us basically to make sure that those employees are charged to the project, and that we can account for them without having to do a lot of the diving or
Got it.
digging into
You
it.
convinced us.
Okay.
Or you certainly convinced me. Let me ask,
Yeah.
would it make sense though, this new fund, which is just for the project, would it make sense though to have that be a a capital project fund, not an internal service fund.
So that is what 350 is proposing. So-
Got it. So that's exactly what you're suggesting. Got it. Yeah, I was gonna, there's a question, what is Fund 350?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. And it's a lot of numbers. A lot of numbers are thrown at you. Go ahead.
Sorry, Director, can you just go back to the last slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and again, great presentation. I'm just really trying to get my head around this.
Yeah.
So the 1.86,
Mhm.
I understand where that's coming from.
Mhm.
The complete ask is the 2.233, correct?
Correct. So when you add up the total 1.86,
Mhm.
add up the 1.03, and then subtract out the $659,000 below, you get to the 2.23 million that you see there.
Okay,
Okay.
so just
Go on.
one
Yeah.
follow-up. So then the delta, which is what, 460 something, 67, where is that being funded?
So it's a little bit weird. So the numbers aren't going to line up
Okay,
exactly because it's the life of project budget when we're focused on the 23-24 biennial budget. So this table back here only deals with 23 and 24.
okay,
We've already spent money on the project previous to this 2-year period. And so we're reconciling 23 and 24.
so we spent money on the project effectively in fiscal year 22,
Yes,
21.
starting in 21,
Okay.
generally 22 as well.
Okay,
But we shorted, right, the budget for 23 and 24 with the placeholders, for example.
because we had
So-
already spent those funds.
Because we're estimating and then just adding a placeholder, for example. So ideally, what would have happened is we would have a continuing appropriation where council would give staff the authority to say, correct the project budget at the end of the year, because by that time, we already know how much we would have spent. When we're trying to estimate how much we're going to spend by the end of year around the summertime period, often we're some cases wildly missing, and I think we probably wildly missed on this. And now we have to true it up, which is why I'm saying when you look at add this all up together, if the life of project budget, if the remaining implementation budget for the life of the project is equal to how much we have remaining in the implementation budget for the 23 and 24 biennial budget, those two numbers equal, that means that the life of project budget has been trued up with the 23-24 biennial budget.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
And it's the same thing that we struggle with other capital projects as well. So I might request from council down the road that there's a capital project proviso, for example, as a part of the biennial budget ordinance that would give staff the ability to true up each and every project budget. Yeah, I could see at the end of the year, but Mike Chambliss here has experience with continuing appropriations where he's worked before, something that I've never dealt with, and he may want to introduce that concept at some point down the road too.
Go ahead.
Oh, we've discussed that extensively. State law in Washington does allow us to do that. Our current budgeting process does not do that, but that's something that we've talked about. So, we would, I don't know, in Washington, they might use slightly different term, but it's the same concept, which is we, would fund a project rather than
Yeah.
fudge a,
Budget.
I didn't mean to say fudge, rather than budget just 2-year periods. So we budget time periods rather than projects. And which makes sense when you're talking about operating funds, makes sense when you're talking about utility funds, not so much capital funds. So, that's something that we have discussed in the past. So, maybe it gets discussed again in the future. At the time, there was a lot of concern about, it just doesn't matter. You guys will revisit it if and when you sort of relook at that.
So
Sorry, that's, yeah.
So in essence, the requested amounts are the $1,590,000 and the 861. Do I have that correct? 6190, 923.
So basically the total appropriation required down below here. You have to keep in mind that not only do we have to appropriate for the expenditures, but we also have to appropriate for the transfer of money to other funds as well. And then in addition to that, there's a lot of cleanup work that we're doing too, with the subtractions that you see below as well, that gets you to that 2.23 million.
Okay.
It's kind of weird because we're appropriating for money that's flowing between the different funds, but it's not actually leaving the city's coffers or doors necessarily. And so sometimes that, the numbers can look a little bit outstanding. We've tried to do some work where we've consolidated the funds so that we can actually shrink the amount of transfers across the city so that we're not, and really tried to do a better job of actually just reporting just expenditures that would go into either the employees' pockets or out to vendors, for example. So to have all this cross traffic going on between the separate funds, that's, it's confusing.
Just follow up on that point. I just don't know the answer. In our system, under state law in Washington, we can't refer to a transfer as a transfer. It is an appropriation. That's part of the definition of appropriation. That's just how the definition works. Okay. So I think this is going to confuse everyone. So my suggestion of how to solve is just, you need this. This is fantastic, by the way, great. I've given my comments as to whether we should be moving taxes or just doing a transfer, but it's the same numbers either way. So my suggestion is that we start this with a summary that says that focuses on, I think you've got some of this in some of the later slides, but just focuses on how much more money are we asking council to spend, which, to be honest, I'm not quite clear whether that number is 467K or 571K. I think it's 467K.
For the life of project, but yes. So in essence, it should be the 460. I'm not sure where the 570. Oh, there's the 571 right there. So hold on. So
There it is.
Well, the remaining implementation budget, right? So that is without expenditures, money that we haven't, or expenditures, money that we've already spent. It's already out the door, paid for. There's also outstanding contract values. So in essence, the city would have $571,000 kind of left over in the project budget to use towards other needs as well as other contracts that may be coming forward.
Well, then, if we're going to have 571, why do we need 467 more? Why aren't we just good to go?
So that's the remaining implementation budget. So the difference is between the beginning implementation budget and the proposed implementation budget. That's where you get the $467,000.
Can I just ask you, does any of this plan to be spent after the 23-24 biennium, or is the total project expected to complete by end of 24?
We are extremely hopeful.
It is likely that we would have to be addressing 25, 26 for this project.
All right, let me ask it a different way. Gotcha. I understood your answer. I didn't ask my question well. These numbers that you're showing here, therefore, based on what you said, some of that, in fact, may get spent in 25, right?
Yes.
But the number, as we know today, would be that number. That's what we believe the number to be.
That's
Okay,
right.
so then where I was trying to go with the questions is, why would it not be good that this thing just ends at zero? Like, am I understanding you say it'll end with 571 left over?
Well, so we would anticipate we're going to end with zero. And in fact, we go back to the first slide. That's in essence what the fund is showing, the fund schedule is showing.
I thought.
But we haven't allocated that $571,000 yet. So right now it's just expenditures to date and outstanding contract value. But we think that there's going to be more expenditures for which we don't have contracts issued at this point, or other needs such as GIS services or other kind of additional supplies and stuff like that over time, where we do need to make sure that there's some budget available for us to access. If this was the remaining implementation budget was zero right now, we couldn't go out and get those GIS services or things like that. So that's the kind of, I hate using the word cushion, right? But in order to help make sure that we've got sufficient appropriation available for us to go do some of those things that are going to arise over time that we don't have a contract for right now.
Why aren't those project changes? Why aren't those future project changes versus pre-fund them before you know what they are?
Well, I mean, as proposed for this, we're proposing the fund. Right?
Right, but you don't know
Yes, sir.
specifically what are the elements or and cost of those elements that make up that additional. You're putting in buffer for an estimate of future need.
Correct. We anticipate bringing a contract amendment forward that reflects what we're going to need for the community development suite, the council. We've had discussions on that, the business management suite, the Socrata Open Finance. We talked about a little bit about this line here called additional services and studies for
But
GIS.
they have not been brought forward yet.
They have not been brought forward yet. Well, for other,
That's a separate action to be approved, and then we have a discussion then of how much and how you're funding, and then we do appropriation to fix.
and what do we do with other projects? I mean, we come forward asking for, say, $2 million for something without a contract approved, right? And we're asking for council to set aside, in this case, $571,000 for anything additional that may be coming forward in the future. And
See, I'm gonna vote no. I'm just gonna vote no. And in the future, if you ever bring me an agenda bill which has account changes and changes to the project, I will vote no. Separate those out. If you want to do account cleanup, you do account cleanup so that we can understand what you're doing. If you have changes to the project, bring change to the project so we understand what you're doing. Balling this all together makes this a confusing mess. I'm voting no. Go ahead.
So on the 467, the concern I have is when I go over to the CIP, so 6-year thing, I didn't say budget, I didn't say capital budget, I said CIP. When I go over to the CIP, there's no excess money. It's all spoken for on projects. In fact, more is spoken for than we have. So my concern is that if we get $467,000 from, I'll use the term CIP, but in this case, since it's in the biennium, that means if we go get 467 from the capital budget, then we need to cut some other project by 467. Otherwise, where's the money coming from? Now, I heard you say earlier, wait, good news, there's some interest in there, so there's more money than we thought. But the way you said it led me to believe it's maybe not 467, it's some portion of that. So maybe that's part of the equation, is knowing where, I'm sort of making a point, or I suppose I mean to ask a question that's sort of a, where's the money coming from question for the 467? Because it seems like all of our money's spoken for. So what are we going to push off or delay or cancel? Like, where are we going to get that money? Or do we have other sources that we didn't plan on?
well, I mean, in essence, in terms of the sources for this fund, we mentioned, the interest or the non-recurring sales tax, because we're collecting a lot of interest right now in the non-utilities capital fund. We can basically reallocate that non-recurring sales tax to this project fund.
Wait, say that again?
Because
Just repeat it, I
we're
just didn't
collecting
catch
a
it.
lot of interest in the
Yes.
non-utilities capital fund. That means we can redirect the the non-reoccurring sales tax towards this fund.
Why did you not say we could allocate the interest towards this?
Because the interest is allocated based on how much money you have currently in your fund. And so, I mean, we could reposition that, right? So we can collect it within the fund and then just transfer out the cash if we want to.
So regardless of the mechanics, do we think that perhaps in the biennium, in the capital fund, we'll have 467 of interest that we didn't plan on?
Well, so I've got 483 listed here.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
So then why not focus on the idea that we can fund this? Because we got a source that's not yet spoken for. We got something coming in above our projection, our budget projection, and therefore we could use that without impacting any other project. Why would we not take that point of view?
Well, I don't think I've been arguing otherwise.
Okay. But if I put it in the form of a question and put words in your mouth, then it makes it more awkward. So maybe I would suggest we think about it that way, because it sounds like we do have a source.
We're trying to bring revenue to the table,
Yeah.
right? That has been basically unaccounted for,
Yes.
right, overall. And we've got a grant here too, listed miscellaneous revenues. So there's going to be interest that's going to be collected in this fund once it kind of gets up and running. And then we've got the transfers coming in that have been already dedicated towards this project, basically, into this fund as well. So we've got the revenue sources in order to support the, the appropriation necessary for this fund specifically.
It seems to me, based on this conversation, that there is a different way to talk about this. It's not the right words. You have talked about it this way, but there's a way to change the order of the presentation such that it will be much easier. Because I'll tell you, I don't think Councilmember Holloway is the only one that's going to have that confused point of view. And I'd hate for you to.
Not the dullest
And
tool
so
in the shed.
the struggle
He's not the dullest. So there's like 1, 2, 3. There's like 4 others that are even duller, right? You know, so they wouldn't understand it as well.
Say that.
I thought that's what he
give
said.
yourself some credit sometimes.
No, but in being serious, laying this out so that, because not just the 7 of us and the main people that need to understand it, but I think also we want our constituents to be able to understand it as well. So I think you can lay this out. I think, and I kind of made this point earlier, I think combining changing the accounting with changing the budget is just a very confusing thing to do. And I would really encourage you to change the presentation so that first you talk about what's changing in the total budget and how we're going to fund it. Then talk about some accounting you want to do, which doesn't change anything versus the first part. And then thirdly, therefore, that adds up to this appropriation request that we have for you. So don't lead with 2.3 million, which has everyone just in a tailspin, certainly had me in a tailspin. Start with 467, which is the only thing you're really changing, if I understand this correctly. And, oh, by the way, follow right on with 467 is all we're changing, and here's how we pay for it. Lead with those 2 things, and the rest gets a lot easier, I think.
Well, please, and I'm going to reinforce what I said again. If you ever bring me an agenda bill which has account changes as well as project value change, I'm a no, period, forever. Okay? Do them as separate actions so that they are understandable and we know what's going on here.
So consider breaking them into 2, is this hint. Consider breaking this into 2.
I feel a lot more comfortable about it now that I know the ask is the 467, because thank you. Councilmember Mayhew's point, the 2.23, I mean, it was sticker shock and just following the math and the spreadsheet. I mean, you're brilliant at what you do, but for a guy like me, I need to be able to make the connections fairly quickly.
And it's the same with like REIT. I would just have everything go into the REIT fund and then we transfer. That's what we've always done with REIT, right? We flow it all into the REIT fund and then we flow it back out to all the places. I'd recommend you do that here, or just leave the construction sales tax going where it goes and then just do a transfer to this guy. It's nice and easy for everyone to follow who's not an accountant. And just, okay, it makes it really easy for them to see, okay, you're just moving it to a separate place. It's not different in total, except for 467.
Let me go back to a base question. Had a project of 1.8. You're asking for 467 in addition to that. So you're at about a 25% increase in project costs?
Yeah.
What happens if we say no to the increase? Guys, a 20% increase on a project cost?
I mean, then we're not going to probably go for the contract amendment. We'll have to cancel some of the employee, right?
Well, and
expenses
let me
as
ask
well,
this,
potentially.
how much of that have we
propose.
already approved to agenda bill or not?
So if you go back to this table.
None of the 467 has been approved yet. He's got 900 less to come ask us for.
So right now, right, with the current budget, that's the top table that you see here. We've got an outstanding contract value of roughly $940,000. Right now, the remaining implementation budget for the life of the project is $105,000. We would have to basically start there would not be any sort of contract amendment, so no Socrata Open Finance, no Community Development Suite, no Business Management Suite. We would not be placing Trackit and CD. In terms of the GIS services, in order to integrate that with, the Enterprise Asset Management module, that would be nothing. We have not really updated this budget since it was first approved back in 2021. There was lots of oversight back then by the two directors that were in charge, right, at that point. And so this is our opportunity right now to try to do what we can to clean it up. When Mike Chambliss got here, for example, he noticed right away that there was a lot of, lack of understanding of what exactly is needed to actually get an enterprise asset management module running. And so through his foresight and how he understands how this works, he's implemented Tyler Munis in his previous location. He knows what it takes to actually get that done. He needs the equipment to be able to go out and track the assets. We're going to fully utilize this asset management module. We have to make sure that the data is there. The previous system that was purchased by the city of Snoqualmie, Nate Star, was never fully implemented, but it was purchased and there was a sunk cost associated with that. If we want to see this work, we've got to put the funding towards it. So I guess, I don't know, it's growing pains, but yeah.
Go ahead.
It was quite apparent that there wasn't much planning that went into the implementation of moving an entire organization over to Tyler. We've had conversations about Tyler and what it can do and what I can't wait. I'm telling you, I can't wait. But it's a ton of work. Not only are we trying to change the spark plugs on the engine of the left engine of the B-17 as we're flying, we're trying to do it in combat because we have low staff. Everybody's trying to do their normal jobs. Everybody's trying to do additional work to get the data collected and audited so it's correct. So when it goes in there, it's correct. So this is not an easy enterprise. 20% higher, a lot of that can be attributed to the lack of equipment that was never, I don't know how they expected Public Works to use it without any computers. I mean, for example, and that's a big chunk. We're going through it with PD. PD doesn't have computers. They have one computer per car, not one computer for each employee, which they basically need to make this work. So it's an issue.
I don't understand why if they're in their office, they got the computer. If they're in the car, they got the computer. If they're not in those locations, aren't they off work? So
Correct, but there's about a 2-hour overlap where the people that are coming off need the computers to file the reports, and the people that are coming on need the computers to go run the calls. And when you have one computer,
my other part is, you're telling me this is a huge project and you're struggling for it and you're going to add 20% on top of it. Okay. Maybe it's not no, but maybe it's not yet. If you keep piling stuff on this is not going to work. It will fail of its own weight. I've seen the ERP projects do that. Okay. It's always entertaining. Okay. Not really.
no, it's not entertaining.
So I'm really cautioning you, this is classic scope creep to failure. So just need to take a look at it. All right, go ahead. You had a.
So I have been warning about, so to be clear, I don't understand why we need one employee per police employee, but never mind that. We need more than one per car, so maybe it's somewhere in between, but let's not sweat the details there. But so I take your point that you believe these are things that are needed to get this project to successfully complete. I take that point. My concern is that I have asked at every single meeting with the project manager, are we on budget? Do you foresee any need to go over budget? I have asked at every single meeting and have been told up until now, no, we're on track, except for there's something that they came and told us we needed, and then fine, we approved that. I have asked a variation of this question every single time, which is, do you need anything else from council? Any funding, any approvals? I have personally asked that. I cautioned at the very beginning of this project about employees that would have to be doing double duty, and had we planned to backfill them, or how are we going to handle that? And then I have brought that up numerous additional times. So we have been talking about this in this committee, and I have to say, to suddenly, what to me feels like suddenly discover that we got a 20% hole is a shock. I'm really surprised that we got this far. Now, better late than never, but I feel like I've lost confidence now in our project management because this hasn't been brought forward before. So take that for what it's worth. I think the question about what if we say no to the 467, I'd really like to see a specific answer to that, meaning, and you don't, if you don't have that tonight, that's fine. I'd rather have a well thought out answer. But so the answers might be, well, we'd have to delay X, or we'd have to delay Y, or, you know, we'd have to take it out of X out of scope for now, or Y out of scope for now. Which is sort of a variation on what I thought Councilmember Holloway said on maybe the answer is not yet, as opposed to no. But I would like to know, what would not yet look like? What would that do to you? What would you be able to proceed with? What would you have to delay or not proceed with at this time? I'm not saying that I would vote against it, but at this point, I feel like I need to know what the ramifications of saying no are before I would say either no or yes. So I would really appreciate that. The one other thing on the 467, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. I'm probably going to say a wrong number, so please correct me if you can even recognize it. I thought I heard some reference to $230K of employee costs that's being moved to another fund or is being incurred in another fund. I just didn't follow that particular piece. And does that, the real question I'm trying to get to here is, does that mean we're really 467 plus 230 over because we're sort of making another fund pay 230 more than we originally thought? Or is that not? I'm just trying to understand how that number fits in.
230 doesn't come up on my.
Okay. I was worried it wouldn't.
Well, that would be like,
Yeah.
one, there's the IT employee, which you're now taking
Yeah.
out of IT and putting on the project. So how much was that?
Oh, that's inbound, not outbound.
So,
Inbound to the project, outbound from IT.
so the difficulty with this is we are going to be bringing forward to council at a later date a staffing changes agenda bill, which has some involvement with this as well. So that project manager has become the IT manager of the department. Well, not the department. I don't know if you want to.
You could division.
Yeah,
Or department.
discuss, but there are
They're
certain staffing
interchanged
changes that
here.
we're going to be bringing a future agenda bill to council. In essence, this is the first cut regarding the ERP project budget. That agenda bill that we bring forward with the staffing changes will then have a following budget amendment associated with that too. So there's a certain number of steps that we're going to be taking over the next month and a half, for example, that's going to be
Wait,
discussing a number of changes with
The
you.
project manager for the ERP project is becoming an IT manager?
We're proposing that in a staffing adjustment change. There's no FTE change. It's just a change in role.
But a portion of her time will be dedicated to the ERP project fund at the same time that a portion as well, the remaining portion will be paid for out of the ERP. What we're also proposing as a part of this is to convert 2 Robert Half contractors basically into full-time employees. It's less expensive for us to do that. Those contracts, for example, are extending a bit further than we had anticipated at the beginning of the process, basically, and so we need to keep them on board through 2024. In addition to that, we needed some support in terms of the chart of accounts in order to get through really a basic element of the ERP system overall. That person that has come on board has really been substantially helpful in terms of getting this project, especially through this most recent date. We went through the blackout week fairly recently. Not sure if you want to give an update on where the project is or.
Well, the go live, the soft launch go live was August 1st. And so we achieved that target in bringing on a staffing resource that had experience with actual Munis implementation as well as chart of accounts, got us over the hurdle because of the nature of the Tyler Munis product. And so we actually have a successful chart of accounts is in, and we are actually able to use the new application then, and now we're paralleling Springbrook and Munis, and that has been successful. We also needed assistance with creating new codes and bringing the budget in. So that has helped tremendously. The original project included some services from the consultant Barry Dunn. We did not see that the value in keeping them as a consultant in that. We needed someone who was actually experienced with Munis implementation, as well as the Washington Bar's chart of accounts. And we found that resource and brought that in. Drew mentioned the fact that we have utilized Robert Half contract employees. And again, we can save dollars over the remaining biennium by bringing them on as limited term employees in order to help support the project. These are staffing resources that you'd mentioned it before that were unforeseen at the time that the council brought this project on in 2021. And yes, it's sticker shock, but these are things that both Mike Chambliss and I coming on said there's some holes in this project, and we have been working to address, can we accommodate for these project deficiencies, and trying to balance what's the best solution. We've been working to try to find what that hole is, and so that is what we're bringing forward to you now, that we see that there were some things missed. Unfortunately, there were some things missed. We weren't here. We're trying to correct it. We're trying to bring you reality for what we see from what we would have to wait for, which is fine. If you're not able to, if you're not comfortable with where we're proposing now, then if we wait, then what we would be looking at is delaying implementation of an integrated permitting and licensing module. That was something that had not been addressed at the time back in 21, 22, was that if you are not going to integrate products, if you're not going to use a solution that Tyler had available, but yet stay with the current solution, which I don't know if that was the mindset, but it appeared to be, because there wasn't any conversations about licensing and permitting. So nonetheless, we've found that solution. We know that in the long term, having integrated modules laying on top of the Tyler Finance modules, that will help create efficiencies, create automated workflows, connect all of the direct service departments and the services that the city provides. That's why that's part of the additional ask here for dollars, as well as the staffing costs that we have seen that were short at the time that the project was greenlighted.
Just 2 points I'd make. One is Will Rogers is one of his famous quotes is, "There's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program." We have brought on in the last few years time limited employees,
Yeah, limited term, yeah.
and they never leave. We get told we must convert them. We now rely on them and we convert them to permanent. So I am not in favor of, and plus, just to be sure, I'm sure you didn't miss this, but just to be sure, you've considered the conversion fees you'll have to pay Robert half when you did the math?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, good. Of course you did. But I won't be in favor of that for that reason. We don't close those positions down in this city. So I'm not in favor of that. The second point I'd make is, please, if department heads are discussing some holes, you may not have the answers yet. Please tell us that you've got some concerns so that by the time you come to us and say, look, we've really sussed this out now, we think 467 is what it takes, then we're with you. I don't feel like I'm with you right now. I'm like, wow. So now I want a little time to try and get with you. That's why I've asked the question, what happens if we say no? If I can get real clear on that, maybe I can catch up to you. That's my hope. But as of right now, I'm also a no vote on this, but that could change. I just need to understand a little better. I need a little different presentation and then maybe I can get there. That's where I'm at.
So let me ask at this stage, administration want to move forward with this agenda bill? You want to take it back and do some work?
I recommend we take it back and we'll do some work.
Okay. I'm afraid if I have any more discussion, I'll say something I shouldn't. So I'm done.
Taking it back, leave it at that.
All right. I think you've heard our feedback. Please take it. Do appropriate. Thank you. Sorry for the rough conversation. Where were we from there? So that was, am I looking at the right agenda, Bill? Nope, that's Parks and Parks. I never know. What's in that? Can we put the agenda back up?
Yes. So let's just back up a little bit because the agenda that I had prior to was the wrong one.
Oh, that's what the problem was. Oh. So did we have the right packet then?
So let me pull up the correct
That makes
packet.
sense.
Revisit the packet.
Yeah, because it says the 8th.
So this is the August 8th agenda packet. And so if we look at the claims approval report here, it is dated August 14th, which is the next city council meeting. And so this is typically how it's done. And it covers the period of July 7th through
Creed,
July.
let's not go back. Let's not go back on that. We had, I pulled the agenda from the
Oh, okay.
webpage, so I had the right agenda and had question on this.
Oh, okay.
So we already decided
Okay.
to pull that, go
Gotcha.
back, look at the dates,
Okay.
go on.
So we'll put that on the next one. Is that what you want to do?
No, we did biennial judgment ERP project. We already did number 3, so we're on the number 4, which is resolution 1659, designating agent to receive claims.
So this is a housekeeping item. So under RCW 4.96.020, that we're required to appoint an agent to receive claims for damages. And for 22 odd years, it was the city clerk. And then in March of this year, it was changed to the risk manager. So we no longer have a risk manager. So I'm just proposing that it move back to under the umbrella of the city clerk.
I have no issue with that part, I do question, we have no risk manager anymore?
No.
I thought that was our insurance state requirement.
Bring those duties now.
So in essence, aren't you the risk manager?
Well, yes, but it's under the umbrella of the clerk.
Yeah, it's a duty of the clerk, but it's still a duty. Go ahead.
Is another, I don't know what the implications of this would be, but is another possibility to also designate you the risk manager? Or does that come with all kinds of other implications?
I mean, if that's what you'd like to do, I mean, I suppose.
Well, I think we should. Again, I think our insuring body, and I can't remember it's a 4-letter acronym, I can't remember,
WCIA.
WCIA.
will ask us who is our risk manager.
Right, and I've already been assigned the delegate for that.
Okay, then, yes, you are the risk manager for the city of Snoqualmie.
Okay.
Okay, and we ought to appropriately anoint you that, so it's in the record. So that's probably next time. This time, I have absolutely no objection, my personal opinion is consented the agenda item to have this responsibility shifted to you as city clerk.
I agree.
I agree.
Is that clear?
So are we just gonna move forward with this, or should we just?
We move forward with this, and I'm good with consent unless anybody objects. But there ought to be another agenda bill which designates you as the risk manager, so we have it on record in case WCIA, whatever it is, ask us, who's your risk manager? We have documentation that says, here's who our risk manager is.
Okay.
Okay? Oh, that was,
Quarterly report.
I want to start with quarterly, discussion items, quarterly report.
Good evening, I'm Jana Walker, budget analyst, and I've brought back the second issue of the quarterly report, and we'll see if we're getting a little bit closer to what we're hoping for. Let me share my screen. Okay, so we've made some changes to this. The first big change is a scorecard. So you're going to open it up and you'll see some pluses or some thumbs up or thumbs down, or just to give you kind of general indication on how we're doing as compared to the budget based on forecast. So this is us looking forward based on what's happened so far to the end of this year to say we think we're on track, or maybe there's cause for concern. We're looking at this a little bit closer. The next thing that comes in the report is some details on those. So when you see, if you see a yellow for general fund, say, you can go and look at a little bit more of detail and just determine what's out of whack, where do we need to pay attention, what are our concerns. And then we have, instead of financial metrics, we have our reserve balances as compared to financial management policy. So we can see if we are, if our funds are in line with what we say that we want them to be according to policy. Finally, what are the current fund balances as of the quarter ended? And then in the appendix, we have a budget status saying everything that's been spent, all the revenue that's come in. And finally, there's a CIP forecast, and that's separate in the appendix because it's not following our forecast modeling. It's more, it's something I did in conjunction with our CIP manager just to give individual estimates for each project, more or less. So I'm gonna skip that one and go straight to our scorecard. And you can see right away, general fund, things are looking good. Reserve requirements, things are looking good. And then in the middle, there's a couple of things saying, well, maybe a question on how we're doing. And if we jump to the detail, this is our general fund forecast. We can see most of it is in line. Of course, on average, it's all doing well. There's a couple of things that might stand out. Non-departmental is a little bit higher, our expenses, higher than we would guess. That's very normal for this. There's a lot of transfers, there's support of local charities and things like that. So it's not monthly expenses, but more one-time or twice a year expenses. So nothing here I see gives me cause or concern right off the bat. We move forward to the special revenue funds, which if you recall, it had a gray thumbs up, which means that things they're 5% below a negative deviation, but we're not really concerned about it. And in this case, the reason for that is North Bend pays us a fee every year for our police services. And there hasn't been doubt about whether or not we'll receive that, but this year we're receiving it in 2 separate payments based on how we've invoiced them. So it's thrown our forecasts off a little bit, but we're not concerned. We believe that this will be reconciled by the end of the year. Similarly, utility funds forecast had some negative deviations for revenue. We were a little bit lower than we would expect to be. And I went into this to see, and I ran some analysis on why this might be. And while it wasn't following patterns of previous years, what I did note is that as of the end of this second quarter, now we're above and beyond where we expected to be. So while I don't really have an explanation for why our sewer, water, and stormwater billing was low, it's not low anymore. And we'll see that in our second quarter. And then finally, we have our internal service funds. Also just a little bit lower than we would expect to see, but those are, as we discussed earlier tonight, those are almost like transfers. We're billing our funds. It's money that doesn't leave the city. It goes from one fund to another. And we're on schedule to end up right on budget as we would expect. So it's even though it was a yellow thumb sidewards, it's not really a cause for concern in my analysis. Next, we have our charts. Now, if you're looking at this in the report that went out in the packet, this graph and the next one are going to look a little bit different. This change didn't make it through in time, but you can see that our general fund revenues, this blue line, is slightly above our the high end of where we would want our general fund to be. And I mean, I would say it shows that we're using up our funds. We're not just hoarding cash. We're spending in line with our policy, which is the goal here. For non-utility capital funds, this is once again based on a forecast of where we will be at the year end. We are well above debt management service levels, which is what that baseline is. Unfortunately, this doesn't really take into account all the project goals that we have. But that's something, I mean, that's why we're meeting here consistently, is that we consider whether we have adequate for all of those goals that we have. But according to financial management policy, we want to be able to cover the debt, and we're doing that very well. Next, we have utility operating fund. This fund should have a reserve of 90 days of operating expenditures. Once again, like the general fund, we probably had excess funds for a certain amount of time, and now we're drawing closer to where we would want to be. And this is, again, based on forecasts. And then finally, we have our utility capital fund. This is the forecast done with the CIP manager. Again, for this one, it's a little bit more complex than the others, not a straight up, we want 90 days of spending, but what we want instead is 125% of our required debt payments. And then we add to that whatever is specified by our utility rate study. And I believe it's 2021 is our current rate study, and we're going to have another one this year. So that could stand to be updated. We will see, but right now this red line just below 5 million is about where we want our reserves to be for the capital fund. Fund balances currently, this is where they're standing. You can see that there's some big decreases in the budget. First of all, you'll see general funds went down substantially. That's in large part because of transfers that we're making to the non-utility capital fund.
Sorry, it's labeled cash balance. Is this the cash account balance, or is this the fund balance?
Oh, Thank you for asking. So this is our cash reserves. I'm mixing.
So this is a
terms up.
cash number, it's not a fund balance.
You're right.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, this is our cash balance. This is earning interest in the bank right now. It's gone down slightly for general fund. For two reasons. As we discussed last time, property tax revenues come in the second quarter, so this doesn't really show the receipts that we've had since then. And then also there's transfers to the non-utility capital fund. And special revenue funds is what we indicated earlier with the North Bend Police Service fee. So that probably, if we were to look at it right now, it would look a little bit different. I'm gonna go back one.
Sorry, just before you go off that slide, can you just go back to it?
Yep.
Just so you catch it, at the top, the columns are listed cash balance, and you clarified that's what they are. At the
Yes.
bottom left, it says total. I
Oh,
think that should say
okay,
cash
you're
balance, right?
absolutely right.
No, I just want to make sure you saw
I'll
that.
fix that, yep.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
So I should read total cash balance.
Now, one of the things we discussed last time was GFCs. Hard to forecast. We don't really know what our growth, I wouldn't say that the growth that we anticipate could happen within the biennium. It may not. This chart, the reserves, does not include the, this assumes that we would not receive the full amount that we budgeted that we would receive. It just assumes that we would receive the part that we're anticipating from the tribe, which is, I think it's like under $1 million. And then let's move on. Some things that are upcoming. There will be design work on the community center, construction of Snoqualmie Parkway project. We know that one's happening. So we'll see funds going out the door and then coming back in the door for that. Construction of water reclamation facility is going to begin soon too. And then this doesn't address some of the other changes that are happening as part of our class and compensation studies, wherever we may land with that. Budget status report. I know it's not going to be very helpful. Oh, it's even smaller up there. But this is our actual status, where we are, how much we've spent, and how much we've received in revenues. And then our final 2 pages are our forecast of where we might be at the year end based on what's happened so far and what we anticipate happening for the CIP. These are grouped by project type, so you can see transportation has had a lot of activity or is anticipated to have a lot of activity. Parks, similar. Some of these will be 100% spent by the year end. Some of them, it's a little bit deceptive. For example, Snoqualmie Parkway, we budgeted more for that than we will actually spend. So it says by the end of the year, we anticipate spending 67% of the funds, but that will be all we're spending. So just because it doesn't say 100% doesn't mean that more funds are expected to go out the door in the future. And then finally, we have the utilities, the lower half of the CIP, the similar. We don't anticipate as much happening in the water utility, sewer utility, a bit more is happening, stormwater similarly, and of course, all of that information technology. So that is the quarterly report as it stands currently, and I welcome all the feedback that we can get to make this just the document that you're hoping to receive.
Go ahead.
Where did you guys find, this is a home run. Holy cow. Where'd you get her? Get more of those.
Well, if we have to delay some things.
For what it's worth, fantastic job.
That's
And
very kind.
the discussion that you just led us through using this report, this is exactly the kind of discussion that's, I think, so useful to us. So once you change the report, the discussion naturally followed. It's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, you asked for it. So hopefully
You
I'm giving
delivered
what
it.
what you asked for.
Hey, I just so you know, could you go to slide 15?
Yep. And tell me, I have no idea which.
Oh, you're on, it's down the bottom.
Oh, there we are.
One more.
Okay.
Oh, is that it? Yeah, there. Budget status report actuals, just so you know. You got that on one page. Now you said it's kind of small, and it is. You got it on one page. Just so you know, the day I came onto the council, I asked for the budget status report. And I was given that report. It's 281 pages long. Just so you know. You remember, Mr. Boutte, right? So, you know, just to give you some historical context, if not that, I mean, I haven't been on the council decades. It's only been a number of years. So fantastic. Anyway, could you just go to slide 10?
Yep.
So I'm gonna have a similar comment on slide 12, but on slide 10, what would I think be helpful here? So first off, I think you should publish this as it is. I think this is a home run, but you might take this, you know, for the next quarterly report as you develop it. My suggestion here is for capital funds, right? So these are monies that we sort of build up over time and spend, you know, any given, you know, the balances fluctuate wildly over the years, depending on when projects actually happen versus when we're accumulating for them and so on. But we budget for that to happen. And so what might be helpful here, the thing I worry about is someone who doesn't understand that looking at this slide and drawing the conclusion that, oh, look, we have lots of money.
Right.
And not realize, well, yeah, but it's all spoken for. So maybe you could add a third line, which is just a line showing the, I'll use the term planned fund balance. You know, what does our plan think we ought to have? So that someone realizes, oh, they actually have a plan. This is like according to plan, or I can see how far off their plan it is. So slide 12, if you just flip to there, exact same comment, because that was non-utility, now we're in utility. One of the reasons it's especially relevant, that comment in slide 12 is, right, our residents worry about, hey, what's my utility bill? Why are you setting the rates where you're setting them? Couldn't you set them lower? And they might look at a slide like this and say, look, you got all this, why are you charging me such high rates? And the answer, as you know, is, well, because we have a whole bunch of CIP projects that need to happen, improvements and maintenance, et cetera, to the system. So again, just adding a line of planned balance might really help avoid someone, you know, misconstrue or misunderstanding.
And when you say planned, like maybe the next 2 years of the CIP in there, because I know at some point revenues will run out of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to use your judgment.
Okay.
I think it's a little bit easier on the utilities fund because we do as part of the rate study, there's I think a 20-year plan. So it's kind of easier to get these numbers for the utilities than it is for the non-utilities.
Okay.
But, you know, give some context so that someone doesn't perhaps draw the conclusion, gee, you got all this money, what, you know.
Lower my rates.
Lower my rates. And then the only other comment I have is on slide 13. Oh, I already made my comment there.
Okay.
Yeah, super.
Justin Washington, any comments?
No comments at this time. Wonderful job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Other than this, fantastic.
Okay. Well, thank you for your feedback. We'll
Sit
implement
down
that.
and read.
Thank you so much.
So the intent, let's go back up here, not there. I guess we'll cover that. And the intent is to go through this as part of special business up front to see council agenda. Okay. That was mine. All right, stop it, machine. All right, so I believe that covers the agenda. We have upcoming agenda items, but we had a couple of additions. You want to talk utility rates?
Yes, there was a hint to the answer. The question I wanted to ask is, I'm worried about utility rates because when we last updated them, what we sort of committed to was trying to have a 5-year utility rate outlook that we would then update, every couple years. And I think we're down to 3 years left on that outlook. So I think we had a 6-year outlook at that point. We're down to 3 right now. In the budget that we passed last winter, we significantly increased the operating expenses from what was allowed for or anticipated in the rate study. So I'm really worried that that means our rates are too low right now. They're not recovering what they need to, but I don't know if that's true. I thought we agreed during the budget cycle that we would do a rate study this year, and I'm just worried it's August, is that the plan or when's that going to happen? So I just wanted to bring up that question. If you don't have the answer tonight, that's okay. I just wanted to raise the question.
So it is very much on the agenda for the department to get to. We would acknowledge the inflationary spike that everyone has experienced over time and how that may impact our operating expenses. And so we've identified that as in addition to that, you're correct, it was a 6-year utility rate schedule that council had adopted. We're now basically with 3 years remaining starting in 2024. This would be the appropriate time to do that. One of the things that we're working through right now is the negotiation process with the Teamsters Union, which will impact that utility rate study. And so we're hoping for that domino to fall first prior to actually engaging in the utility rate study so that we can incorporate that into sort of budgeting for the next 6-year utility rate schedule.
That sounds great. I would just say if we could get that done in time that we could adopt a revised utility rate schedule going forward in this year, such that January 1st of next year, I suspect that the rate increase needs to be higher than it currently is in the schedule. And the further we delay, the more the increase has to be. So it would be really good, I think, if we could get that done this year such that we could pass a revised rate schedule, but specifically including next year, because I think they're probably going to need to be higher than the rate schedule currently anticipates.
Our next steps are to issue an RFP for service providers for that rate study. Likely the typical consultants will respond to the RFP and then be bringing that forward and getting that into an active study so that we can accomplish that by year end.
Anything else?
One other item. Should I bring up the topic or not?
Go ahead, then I'll do mine.
Okay. I just want to be thoughtful in what I say. There has been a thought that that our existing resources are going to be very strained to pay for the rate increases that the unions may be asking for. And that as a result of that, we may be unable to fund an amount without drastically cutting services to fund an amount that, might be asked or might be where those end up. I don't know. So I don't want to presuppose how those negotiations are going to turn out, but if we're going to need more resources than we have, then we're going to need to go and ask the voters for that. Well, we either have to cut services or go ask the voters for a levy lid lift. And the lead time for that is such that I'm worried that if we're not actively planning for that now, we will find that the deadlines pass and we won't be able to get that on the general ballot next year, which is when I think, and maybe we would need it sooner than that. So it just depends timing. And so all I want to bring up the topic is, if this is something we're going to need to do, I really think we need to get the ball rolling on this, or time will overtake us. So I don't know what the next steps are, but I wanted to raise the topic.
Let's hold, because I'm not ready to go there yet. Okay, I'm gonna make proposals, have a discussion. I think we should have an executive session at the end of council next week to talk the labor contracts. So that we can discuss potentially based on where our financials are, what we think is reasonable expectations in those discussions coming forward, okay? I don't want to get into too much detail. It's inappropriate for us to have the discussion here. But when we get to council, again, I'd like to add an executive session to particularly talk those labor contracts.
Great.
Let's see where things are and where we are, okay?
If I might then, we are working on a presentation for options for what those alternative or new revenue sources might be, whether it's a levy lid lift, whether it's a sales tax, public safety sales tax, whether it's a different options, excess levy for some of the expenditures that we are forecasting likely to have. So wanting to bring that presentation forward to the council so they could see all the options, where's the direction for us to focus on, from a planning perspective, because it is time sensitive, obviously, for getting ballot measures in play.
You'll bring that here?
Well, we would anticipate that we would bring the presentation to F&A committee to get feedback first and then strategize or create a plan going forward with where the discussion needs to go.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, that was your items. I have one item. My understanding there is discussions on a request for proposals concerning city property for affordable housing. Where's that coming from?
That's an item for CD Director Arteche. I don't know if she's online or not, but
Okay, well, I'll tell you my opinion at this stage. It is not coming from a city entity or an entity under which we have an MOU or LOA with. Therefore, there is no legal standing for an RFP. Okay, it is incorrect. I will further follow that entity has requested several council members to work with them on developing the RFP. I don't necessarily have argument with council participation on that. I do have argument that external entities do not get to cherry pick which council members they have. Council assignment is a council decision. Third, where there is a conflict of interest and are driving items, Mayor, you and I had discussion. I'm still expecting your assistance in reining those kind of things in so that we get them as council things, not individual things.
Are you the mayor pro tem?
I am the mayor pro tem.
Okay.
I'm not driving it.
Is it a particular council person that you're talking about?
The external entity is the Affordable Housing Task Force.
Okay.
And I believe the chair of that task force has spoken that he want yourself and two other council members by name on the workforce, on the working team.
I see. Okay, haven't been asked, but okay.
Okay, I wasn't sure what you were aware
So
of.
maybe as mayor pro tem, maybe we should talk to your council members about it.
I will have that
Instead of-
discussion. I am secondhand in the conversation myself.
Okay.
Okay, so that's partially why I'm a little, well, it was the traffic that really got me grumpy, but it's.
sorry, Drew.
Okay, but
My fault.
I'm really concerned, again, that we have an external entity approaching an RFP where they have no legal standing to do that.
So,
That get crosswise with somebody real quick.
yeah. And so we're not going to act on anything unless it comes through the majority of the council.
Okay,
That's what we do. Okay?
thank you. I didn't know that you were unaware as I was, based that they said that you were there. Okay. Did I cover that appropriately, or have I missed items?
Nope, absolutely. Just a point of clarity. I'm involved in the Affordable Housing Task Force. So is that, it's a,
So-
not necessarily a committee
You were
formed,
there as a private citizen, you were there before your
Right,
appointment
right.
on council,
right?
okay? Where we get crosswise is where we would fail to compartmentalize, am I here as a private citizen or am I here as a council? If I'm here as a council, I should have should have put me there. Okay, and then in your representations, yes, you can say I'm city council, but I'm here representing myself.
Absolutely.
Okay, or I'm
And that's
giving my opinion.
And that's my understanding.
And to be clear, though, on this particular council member, you did appoint to that task force. So I reached out today and sent an email and stated, it really needs to go through community development committee and have council input on this. But you did assign that person to that task force. Officially.
True.
Okay, so, but I'm on the same page. Needs to go through CD committee and then also through council.
Cool. Okay. That's my main thing is I want to get this in the right channels.
Right.
Thank you.
We only act if it's through the right channels.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, not stating that I think anything improper has happened, but just because of the confusing nature, what I found confusing about the conversation, I'd like to make a request, which is that we have the city attorney advise council members, either executive session and whatever the appropriate method, format is, but advise us so that we're all clear on what is a legal way for an RFP to be issued for the city or for the city's property, and therefore what would be illegal or fraudulent if it was done outside of that. So, because I'm worried that folks may with the best of intentions, I mean, we just saw a bunch of indictments in other states of people that may have thought they were doing something and ended up doing something illegal. And so if we could just advise our council members, I mean, some of us are new, just here's how city property dispositions, city spending, here's how RFPs are issued. If you do it some other way, then it's fraudulent. Just helping us to understand what are the parameters for how RFPs work for city property or city funds so that nobody inadvertently does something, that they shouldn't without realizing it.
Could that be tagged on to our executive session?
Because then maybe it would allow for a Q&A in that regard.
Right.
I don't know
I'm not
that
sure
we'd
that's
be part of
that
executive session.
session material.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
Okay. that's
So
not-
whatever the appropriate format is.
I'm not city attorney. I am a former CD director, and I can tell you the process that we always used was that the council directed staff to solicit for an RFP for proposals to dispose of city property that way. That's the way that I've always done it.
That's what I expect, but maybe if just an attorney advises council members who
They
may
will
not be
certainly
so
get you
clear.
that advice, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to let you know what the normal process I'm used to.
Take the hopeful hypothetical that the Shriners want to open a children's clinic up on is it S21 by the hospital? I can't remember the numbers right offhand. S21, and how would that work appropriately? And what do we think if the Shriners were to do an RFP without consulting us? What would that look like? And we can maybe take some of the emotional content out of it and have a discussion. And you can nominate.
trying to help
You can
people stay out of
nominate me
trouble.
as head Shriner. Okay,
I don't think we own this 21.
huh?
I don't think we own this 21.
What would be the appropriate platform?
Pick one. It's all hypothetical for the discussion purposes.
What would be the appropriate platform for discussion like that, for a discussion like that with the attorney, with the council?
Well,
Open
I
council.
don't think we know. Let's let them ask the attorney. He may be able to give, anyway,
Direction.
let's leave
Okay,
it to the
okay.
attorney. He'll know how to give
Give
us
the
this
attorney.
advice.
Okay.
Typically, there are two reasons for executive session. It's potential litigation and labor discussions,
Okay.
labor or
This doesn't qualify. in either.
staff management
Okay.
discussions.
Absolutely.
Okay, but other than that, we have to be in the bright lights.
The sunshine.
Too much corporate.
All right. With that, let's go ahead and look at the council agenda. I think we've covered the rest of the items of discussion and everything. So looking at the, can we get to it? Wait a minute. Sorry, let me catch up. I moved down on the agenda.
Call to order.
Okay, so the proposal is we start at 6.
Well, I think that may have been of no longer needed. Didn't we just delay that?
You do have the quarterly report in there.
Report in there as well.
Do you need, is there?
So if we take
non-sufficient
Agenda
time?
Bill 23070 out, can we do the quarterly report 30 minutes? Still start 30 minutes early?
Is there anything else we want to move to the 6 o'clock portion from the agenda? Is their concern was there's a lot in the agenda and they all need to be acted on. So perhaps there's something we could move. to
Piece, but
earlier.
I thought there was issues on acting on things in that 6 to 7 o'clock hour.
But we could have the discussion.
We can have discussion on them.
We can take action, special workshop.
Yeah, if I schedule the 6 o'clock a special meeting, then we can take action.
Right.
I would not be in favor of that.
I'm sorry, repeat?
If I schedule the 6 o'clock as a special meeting as opposed to a roundtable, then we can take action.
Hand raised.
Go ahead.
Are you sure you can schedule a special meeting on the same time, same date as a regular meeting?
Just have to give 24 hours notice.
Could we have an executive session as part of a roundtable?
Yeah, you've done that in the past.
Can we do that?
Certainly did.
Maybe we move the executive sessions up front?
So let's do that.
Closed
Let's
session?
do the first 30 minutes of the quarterly report, the last 30 minutes of executive session from 6 to 7 o'clock.
Okay.
And from there, we'll move into the regular agenda. From there at 7, call to order, pledge of allegiance. Maybe Councilman Benson will say it right. Agenda approval, hearing public presentations, swearing in of police officers. Okay, we haven't, all right. Good, we get really them up front and let them go out and celebrate. Appointment to Planning Commission. Do we have any presentations or proclamations?
I think we do have presentation. We received the plaque for,
We're gonna have to wait till they're on vacation.
Oh,
for the
never
next
mind.
few weeks.
next time.
Future date.
The following.
Future date, okay. So put held items there, but no items in presentation proclamations. All right, consent agenda, we have approval of city council meetings, approval of claims report.
Are we moving that?
Huh?
Oh, yeah, we did.
No, we said we'd go for, I thought we said we'd go forward with it, but as a secondary action, go look and review with the attorney the date issue.
Yeah, we do have
We
it.
had the updated report.
Yeah, we've got the report, we've got it signed. We question the process around the date of the report. That's a homework assignment, but this report moves forward.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then resolution 1659 designating agent to receive claims, although we didn't say it, I have no objection with that being consent.
I think we did say it, and we agree.
Okay.
Anyway, if we
Did we?
didn't, I agree.
We agree, consent.
Oh,
Wanna-
sorry, I'm wrong.
Okay, I agree then. Consent. Just had to get my 2 cents.
I remembered it wrong, sorry. I misremembered.
We had, Council, Shambliss, help me,
Splash
what
pad,
which one went up to consent?
splash pad.
Splash pad? Okay.
I wouldn't plan on that being on consent.
Which one?
Well, I
And
can't,
and the fences.
No, I'm just giving him a heads up.
okay, fine, but I can't violate what.
No,
the
I'm
committee
just
did.
giving him a heads up.
So,
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
It's likely that will be pulled off of consent, just trying to give you a heads up.
Okay.
okay, then, the resolution approving selection of CDK for storm pond fencing repair, agenda bill AB 23-100 is consent, as well as AB 23-101, purchase of community park splash pad equipment. I won't read the rest. That will also be on consent. Probably pulled, but nonetheless. All right, from there, we'll move into public safety. At this stage has no current agenda bills. Community Development Center, all right, Community Development Committee, sorry, has agenda bill 23097, Pacific Rail Museum, still wanting a different name. We've had those discussions, we'll go on. Then the Public Works will have resolution approving the design build contract for a community center, agenda bill 23089. License agreement with Line Experience Incorporated 099. The last two got pulled into consent. F&A, we currently have no agenda bills. Committee of the whole, no actions. We'll move into report, mayor's reports, commission committees, and liaison reports, department reports. And will we still, if we move the executive session up there, we still have an executive session at the end?
Just in case we still.
Just in
go
case?
longer.
All right, no, just, and move to adjournment. Any other changes or comments?
Online, there's a question.
Director Artecha? For some reason, oh, there she goes.
All right, I'll trust you. Somebody has to make me a panelist for me to see that stuff, but,
Jimmy, we need Emily.
Director Artesia, you have a question?
to be your
Oh, can you make her a
Panelist.
panelist also?
Oh, making us families.
Where'd she go? Oh, there she is.
No, I don't have any questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I think we worked through some of the issues that I'm just been listening through.
Okay. Thank you. I think we discussed. Yeah, I think we discussed and we'll have further discussion moving on. All right. If there are no other suggestions or amendments, we will take the agenda as discussed, as approved for next week. Hearing no objections, council agenda for next week is approved. All right. With that, I think I'm at the end of the agenda, or did I miss something?
Looks like you got it all.
Adjournment. All right. Anybody object to being adjourned? Hearing no objections, we are adjourned.
All right.
Great job.
Anybody got a traffic report?
We'll get on 405.
Give me 20 minutes, I'll get up there and get a close for you.